So yeah, this is just a Hedera Hashgraph introduction. Now, some of you may know what it is, some of you may not know what it is. So I'm just going to give kind of a little brief introduction into Hedera Hashgraph itself before we get started. So yeah, this is the contents of the lesson. It will just be what is Hedera Hashgraph, why I should learn about it, what can I build with it, the resources which you should go to when you require some help, particularly when developing. Then we're going to actually kind of begin the coding side of things. So yeah, so kind of the first stage which any developer needs when it comes to developing with the Hedera Hashgraph is creating their testnet developer account. So we're going to basically set that up as well. I'll let you know why you need it. And then we're going to begin with the actual programming side of things, and we're going to be sending our first transaction on the testnet. Now with Hedera Hashgraph, there's two networks. You've got the main network and you've also got the test network. Now, the main network is where things, where real use cases should be on. That's where the transactions actually cost real, tangible money. And it's paid in HBAR, which again, we'll talk about. And the testnet is the one which developers use to test out the product before making it live, because obviously you don't really want to spend a lot of money. Despite the fact that Hedera Hashgraph is very cheap, you don't want to spend anything when you're testing your products. Trust me, there's too many times where it fails and you get charged for failure, basically. So that's why it's good to do it on the testnet first and then publish it once you know you've got a working product. So yeah, we're going to be sending a transaction. Now there's kind of three steps in which you send a transaction. You need to create it, then you need to sign it with this private key, and then you need to submit it to the Hedera network. And that will basically be it for this week. I'll do a little sneak peek into the next week, where we'll be covering threshold keys and scheduled transactions. They're two pretty cool features. And yeah, we're gonna learn some of the really cool stuff that you can do with this Hedera Hashgraph. So yeah, what is it? Well, Hedera Hashgraph, it is a blockchain alternative. For those who don't know what a blockchain is, the way that I like to view a blockchain is basically it's a public database which, oh, there we go. Hey, Elizabeth, we've just got started. You haven't missed much there. So yeah, what's Hedera Hashgraph? Basically, it's a blockchain alternative. What's a blockchain? A blockchain is just like a public database which cannot be changed. So any record, any transaction that has been done and has been verified, that is the standard. It is not going to be possible to alter it or to create a fraud on it. And the fact that it's public increases the transparency, and it means that anybody can verify any transaction between two parties. You can't really hide things. Now, the clue's in the name Hedera Hashgraph. It's not technically a blockchain. It's this new technology called a hashgraph, which Hedera have actually patented. However, a hash graph, it basically does the same thing. It's like I said, it's a public database. A public distributed ledger is the more technical term, and it uses hash graph technology, which actually makes it a bit more efficient and less energy wasted. On top of that, the fact that it's just like a public database, it's also a tokenization service. So straight out of the box, Hedera Hashgraph gives some really cool features which allow you to create fungible and non-fungible tokens. You've probably heard of NFTs and you've probably heard of cryptocurrencies. Those are examples of non-fungible tokens and fungible tokens. And we'll get into all of that in these upcoming lessons. And then finally, it's a place where you can deploy smart contracts. A smart contract being a computer program which is deployed on this fixed public database. So basically, you've got your smart contract up, everyone is able to see it. There's no sort of cheeky hiding stuff, and it stays on this fixed ledger. So this is what Hedera Hashgraph is. Why should you learn about it? Now, I'm going to take you to the hedera.com website, and they give a pretty good rundown, as they would. It is a business, as to why you should use their own product. And yeah, so 10 times faster than other blockchain alternatives. If we go over here, you can see kind of it compared to Bitcoin and Ethereum. It's these are slightly outdated, to be fair, but when it comes to the cost, I mean, it's a fraction of a cent. let alone a fraction of the cost that you pay on these two main networks. Much quicker, and to me, very importantly, it's very, very eco-friendly. It's got a very low footprint, and as you can see over here, carbon negative. Another thing what kind of I particularly like about Hedera Hashgraph is the fact that the people who are currently owning and governing the network, who are running the nodes, verifying the transactions, are these guys over here. So quite a few big names. Obviously, they're expending their own resources in keeping this network running. And I think that in itself is kind of a good enough, well, not in itself is a good enough reason, but it's definitely an attribute as to why this is a good thing to learn. One thing to note is that it's technically not decentralized yet, because obviously we've got all of these companies who are in charge of running it. However, they are moving to a totally trustless service where anybody is able to set up their own node and help verify and validate the transactions. So yeah, it's cheap, quick, safe, and sustainable. It's pretty good for me. And then what can I do with it? So this is just one example of Goment, who are a team who I am working with, and they're actually one of the first, I think the first NFT marketplace on Hedera. What they are is a software as a service, and they help people tokenize businesses, tokenize charities, artists and musicians, essentially bringing this technology, allowing these types of people to capitalize on their own audiences and be able to essentially make money from it without having to rely on, is that a message? Without having to rely on anybody else. So yeah, this is kind of what this is. Well, I'll show you actually. This is the stuff that I've done with them, which is basically integrate the payment service over on their NFT marketplace. And pretty much behind the scenes, everything you see here, there's also this thing called Hashpack and HashConnect, which is a cryptocurrency wallet. Obviously, a wallet is the first point of call when it comes to interacting with the blockchain or the hash graph. But pretty much everything behind the scenes here is the Hedera token service, which is what we're going to be learning in this 6-week course. So as you can see, you can buy now, you then confirm this transaction, and rather than sending HBAR, which is what we'll be doing today, you're sending USDC. USDC is just an example of another fungible token. But yeah, like I said, behind the scenes, pretty much what's happening is we're interacting with the Hedera token service, doing stuff which I'm going to be teaching over the next 6 lessons. And the resources. So yeah, this is, again, the slides have already been sent to everybody here. But if you want to check out kind of what to go to do some of your own research outside of this, my first point of call would definitely be the documentation. The try examples, which I'll show quickly now, they're a really, really good point to start. This is where I started myself, and they just have like kind of walkthroughs of similar things to what we'll be covering in my little seminars. So yeah, really good start. Really good kind of reference. Then there's obviously the Discord as well, which I'm quite active on. So if any of you join it and you have questions, it may be me trying to reply. There's a YouTube channel. Well, this is my YouTube channel. To be honest, there's not many YouTube channels on Hedera yet, because it's far more new, far more recent than established blockchains like Ethereum and Bitcoin. But I just view that as it's got a lot more space to grow. So yeah, that's a link to my channel where I do some HashConnect and Hedera Hashgraph token service stuff as well, and smart contracts. And then finally, the Hedera Hashgraph blog, also really good for like walkthroughs. People from the community will help contribute, and yeah, so the blog's also a nice reference point. But yeah, now we're gonna we've done the introduction, and just to confirm, this introduction is only specific to this first lesson. Obviously, I just wanted to get everybody to kind of know what we're going to be dealing with. Now is going to be the coding side of things. So I hope everyone has downloaded Visual Studio Code and Node.js. If you haven't, then we'll just still keep on going, and at the end of this lesson, just stay on the call and we can go through that together. But what I'm going to ask you to do now is create a Hedera developer account. I'll send the link over on this particular Teams chat. So I'm going to drop it in there now. Enter. Cool. And yeah, if you're able to just click on that link and then press on start building, you're going to want to create your own testnet account. When there's a drop down menu which asks, are you a developer, are you a business, or whatever, just put developer. You're all developers now. You're developing on Hedera Hashgraph, so that's what you want to put. And yeah, while you're doing that, I'll leave about 5 minutes for that, I'd say. But yeah, if you could get going with that, I'll explain pretty much what this testnet account is. So I'm just going to sign in my account. Now, this testnet account, what this does is it provides you an account which has a lot of fake HBAR, but it has HBAR, which is the thing that we need to submit transactions and to pay for all of the fees that Hedera requires when dealing with the blockchain, dealing with the hash graph. So basically, yeah, it's an account which gets topped up every 24 hours with 10,000 HBAR. That's more than enough HBAR. Definitely more than enough that we'll need. But just to reiterate, it's not real HBAR. It is the testnet HBAR. And despite the fact it's in the testnet, you still do need to have HBAR in an account in order to like I said, send the transactions and verify everything. So yeah, I'll give it we'll say until 1924. Sorry, I apologize. Some of you might be in a different time zone. 24 past whatever your time is, and if you from there we'll then go on to the next step, which is actually getting started. So yeah, if there's any issues, please don't feel free to just call out. Don't feel afraid to call out or raise your hand, and we can go through it together.
Jake, just got a quick question.
Yeah, mate.
Yeah, so I created the account, and then on the top, of your account bit, the creating account thing is just constantly loading. I don't know if that's supposed to happen or.
Is that so? Oh, okay. So you create the account and it's just gone a never-ending loop.
As in, where it says refill for you, mine says creating account, and then it just has the loading symbol.
Maybe refresh the page.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. It shouldn't
okay,
take too
yeah,
long.
it worked. Yeah? That worked. Yeah, that's fine.
Cool.
All right, cheers, mate.
Cool. That's all right. Yeah, okay. We'll still leave it a couple of minutes then. But thank you to everyone who's put their hand up to confirm that they've done it. Cool. So yeah, so we've ticked off kind of this first of 6 little steps. So we've created a special account to get the testnet HBAR. You can't really see it, but you have got the public and private keys, which is the most important thing. So we'll be using the account ID and the private key. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is creating our code environment. So this is where we need to have Visual Studio Code, and the way that I like to do it is I like to create a folder just on my desktop, and then when you create a new folder, I like to just drag and drop it over VS Code. So that will automatically open the folder that you've dragged and dropped. However, you may not have Visual Studio Code on your desktop. This will also work on MacBook, by the way, doing the similar similar approach. So what you can do is you can then go into File. If you open VS Code, and let me zoom in. Better. So you can go Open Folder, and I've already created a folder which I'll be using. But yeah, if you just create your own folder, which should be no, sorry, okay. I'll start it from scratch. So I'll create a new folder here. And then we'll go VS Code, File, Open Folder, and in our desktop, I'm going to say this one. So this is just going to be a totally empty folder. Just a totally empty folder, which we're going to begin setting up the environment for right now. So can I just confirm that everyone's at this stage? They've got their VS Code opened up, and in the Explorer section, which is the bit we'll be working in, you should say the folder name which you're in. I'll just confirm that everyone's at this stage.
Sorry, mate. I've got a little pop-up box that says, do you trust the authors of the file? Should I do like browse folder in restricted mode, or trust folder enable all features?
Is it that's coming up for when you're trying to open the folder which you've created?
Yeah.
Do you trust yourself?
Okay, so it's okay. That's for us. Okay, fine, cool.
Yeah. I mean, so obviously, if sometimes that's never happened to me when it's like my own folder, especially when it's empty.
I think it's because I have
However,
2 accounts.
okay, right, yeah, I see.
I just
So
wasn't
yeah,
sure if it was in relation to like the VS thing. So
no. So that would be kind of like a check that VS Code are doing for you. But yeah, if
okay, fine,
it's
that's
just
fine.
going to be an empty folder, so there's definitely nothing malicious in there. Right, I'm gonna move on to the next step, which is once basically, okay, we've got our Visual Studio Code terminal window opened up, and now we want to go onto the terminal and click New Terminal, and this is where we're going to initialize our npm and node repository. So before we do that, zoom in one time. Before we do that, I'm just going to make sure that all of you do have Node installed. And the way that we can do that is, like I said, when you go into Terminal and open New Terminal, in the lower half of the screen, or perhaps on the right, depending on where it gets configured, you should get this terminal which pops up. In here, we just want to type node-v node-version. That V is for version. And what that will do is when you press enter, it will cough out what version you have. So obviously, if you don't have Node installed, if you do not have Node installed, then it's going to cause an error. If you do have Node installed, then you should get the version. The version isn't important, so don't get caught up if your version is not the same as mine or if it's newer or older. Really doesn't matter. But yeah, so this is kind of the check to check that we have Node. What I'll do is I'll copy this in the chat. I'll copy all of the commands that I write. Now this we haven't created anything yet. This is literally just we're asking the computer, we're saying, look, what version of Node do we have? And it's saying you've got version 16.17.0. Now we're actually going to do a bit of start to do some of the cool stuff, I guess. Which is initialize our npm repository. Now, all npm is npm just equals node package manager. So that's what npm stands for, and we need it because we're going to be installing some packages from the internet. We're going to be installing the Hedera Hashgraph package, and we're going to be just installing another package which is going to help us use our keys in a secure way. So once we get to once we've checked that we have Node, we're going to type in npm init and then just click enter. I'll copy and paste that in again. npm init. Please, if I'm going too quickly, if someone's still kind of at a step behind, then just call out. Unmute yourself and call out. But you should kind of see this large bit of text. We're going to walk you through blah whatever. You don't need to read that. Just press enter, keep on pressing enter until you finally get to the is this okay, and then press enter one more time. And once you do that, it will pop up with kind of the old user interface where you're able to type. And also something that you may notice is in this in this Explorer item over here, you should be getting a new file called package.json. This is a sign that you've successfully initialized your npm repository. So yeah, we'll do it again by thumbs up. If you can see this package.json in your folder, please get the thumbs up. Also, one thing to note, all of the code and I'll send it out on the chat again. shortly once we get started. But all of the code that I've written for specifically for this lesson, it's already up on a GitHub repository. For those of you who don't know what GitHub is basically the developer's social media. It's a place where you can upload your own files and folders and code and this and that, and other people can see it. So I've created a GitHub repository. That's the word that you use, a repository, and I'll share it. I have emailed it to everyone in here, but I'll also share it in this chat so that you can have it as like a reference to check while I'm going ahead or whatever.
Hey Jake, sorry, I don't have the package.json file coming up. Like I've put in npm in it.
Yeah, has it then returned this utility? We'll walk you through and
yeah, it's returned that.
So what you probably want to do is press enter at 7 or 8 times, and what it will basically do is it just kind of ticks all of these boxes. So there's a few. If we look over in the package.json, we can see that it obviously, which you don't have quite yet, but it's got a name, it's got a version, it's got a description, main, scripts, all of that stuff. And pretty much before we configure it, it's asking us, okay, do you want us to give any specific information? It's really not that important, especially for what we're doing. This is more important for when it comes to large projects which you're going to publish. But basically what you want to do is when you do press and when you do enter on npm init, you just want to spam the enter button until you see yourself back in this user interface where you're able to
it just says at the end, is this okay? Yes. So
yeah,
I'll just press
enter. Press enter one more time.
Okay, yeah, now it's come up. Thanks.
Cool. Awesome. Right, I'm gonna move on. Unless anyone gives another shout now. Please do call out if there's a slight little hiccup, because it's better to get it sorted out prior. Obviously, the thing is, it's one of those things where if one person has an issue, there's bound to be another person. And obviously, like I said, these are getting recorded and will be shared. So I'm sure people watching will also have similar difficulties. But no, it seems okay. It seems like we're all good. So we've now got this package.json. So we've told the computer that, okay, in our Hashgraph seminars folder, or whatever you've called it, of course it doesn't matter. We've told it that we're going to be able to install some node modules, and we're going to be able to interact with some stuff which people have already built. So we're going to do that right away. So I'll also put these commands in the chat. However, what you want to do is you want to type in npm install, and you want to type in @hashgraph/SDK. Again, I'm going to type this in. This will take a minute maximum, because like I said, you're actually going to be installing it from the internet, so you're going to require a bit of, you can't do this without a Wi-Fi connection, but obviously everyone here has one. Now you want to press enter, and you'll see, okay, look, we're starting to install this stuff. We've got this little loading bar at the bottom, and something else which will pop up once it's been installed is we're going to get these new folders over here in our working directory. So we're going to get a node modules folder, and we're going to get this package-lock.json file. Now in here, it's going to tell us what dependencies we have. So we've just installed the Hashgraph SDK, tells us what version it is. And inside the node modules, we can also actually see the Hashgraph SDK thing which we've installed. Now, you do not have to worry about all of these files. What we're going to be doing is we're basically going to be using a very, very small percentage of the whole software developer kit SDK. We're going to be using a very small percentage of them, and we're going to be importing them, and then we're going to be using them in our code. So this is just to show you kind of that, well, this is where it is, but you do not need to worry about the whole extent of files in there. Now, I'm going to assume that everyone's done that again, unless someone gives a shout. But you just basically need to type in what I've sent over there and press enter. You should see it loading and downloading all of the files. There's also another node package which we need to install, and that's one which is called .env. You'll see why it's called .env in a second. Again, I'll type it out, but this is what's going to help us use our keys in a secure way. So for that, you want to type in npm. Now, I'm actually going to use a shorthand of what I did previously, which was install. I'm going to say npm I, and then I'm going to say the package name. Now, this I is just shorthand for this I is just shorthand for install, just a bit quicker. And again, you want to press enter on that. So I'll copy and paste that into the chat. And press enter on it myself. Again, we'll see that similar loading bar. This one's a bit quicker because it's smaller in size. But if we then check out our package-lock.json, we'll also be able to see that now .env is appearing in here. Right, okay. Like I said, we'll keep moving on, but anyone has a question, just holler and we'll help you out. Okay, so back in our Explorer little window, here we're going to be creating a new file, which you can press by next to the, right, there's 4 icons up here, and the one on the very left is new file. You want to click new file, and we want to create a file which is called .env. That's where the name .env comes from. We're not actually going to be using we're going to be using a dot as opposed to spelling DOT. But you should get like a little configuration icon. And what this file is it basically tells the computer, okay, these are my environment variables. You don't really need to worry too much about what they are. However, yeah, this is basically where we're going to be writing in and giving the computer our program, our private keys. And from there, we can use it in a secure way. So just press enter when you've done that. And then I'm going to go, well, firstly into this file, which is going to be empty because we've just created it. And I'm going to be pasting in the developer keys over here. So the one that we're going to, yeah, mate, go ahead.
Quick question. Could you go back to the terminal box on VS Studio?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sure.
So I've got something different at the top of my screen there. I've just called the folder Jake Hashgraph. So I've got Jake Hashgraph. Obviously, you've got open editors above it. I haven't got that. And then
over here.
Yeah. So that's one thing. I don't think that matters right now. But also the little So under Hashgraph, which of the 4 did you press? You pressed the second one, right?
.env.
As in, sorry, at the top where the 4 things are.
No. So we want to press new file.
Oh, new file. Okay, cool.
The second one is new folder. So, for example, if we wanted to create a folder, like I don't know, functions, then we can create a new folder, and in this folder we can then create our function name. So function1.javascript, function2.javascript.
Cool. And then then the second bit is when I press that, I've got the 3 lines like you showed there, but I haven't got a cog. So how did you
okay, you haven't got the cog. Right, okay, maybe I will. So you did, it's written like that, yeah. You've got .env.
I haven't typed in .env yet. Okay, cool.
Okay, you have to type that in, and then that's when Visual Studio Code is an application owned by Microsoft.
Yeah, Microsoft.
I don't know whether they built it.
No, they did. I looked it up before. No, perfect. I've got the same as you now, so that's fine.
Awesome.
Yeah, cheers.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Good stuff, mate. Good stuff. Okay, so yeah, we're going to be referencing back to our Hedera portal now, and like I said, this is the file where we're going to be inputting our account ID and our private key. So what we're going to do is we're going to create the name of our variable. So for account ID, it makes sense to call it account ID. Now, conventionally, and it may be more than just a convention, it may be a necessity, but usually your environment variables you do fully in caps lock. So we're going to call it account ID, and we're going to set that equal to whatever our account ID is. So if we press copy and then just paste it in here, this is now basically told the .env file that we've got an environment variable called account ID, and it is of that value. Now, one thing that you might notice is at the top of your screen in the relevant file tab is a white dot has appeared. This white dot is very, very important. I'm going to emphasize now. Keep looking at the top of your page to see if you have this white dot. This white dot means that you're not saved. So it means that the file's not saved. If the file's not saved, then the computer doesn't get involved with it. The computer will always interact with the previously saved version. So to save it, you can just press Control S, which is what I've done. And as you can see, the white dot disappears. If I then change the file again, the white dot comes back. So yeah, keep looking at this white dot. If you're ever having an issue with kind of what's to come, I'd say the first point of call should be check if your file's saved, because if it's not saved, then that's obviously why it's causing the issues. But yeah, this is kind of like it becomes a habit, just pressing Control S after every time you write a line, pretty much. So yeah, that's our first environment variable. Now, our second one, which we need, is the private key. Could anyone suggest what we might call the private key variable? This is not a trick, private key, yeah. So again, we'll call it in capital letters. Now, the private key, and I'll go into this a bit more when in the next few slides. The private key is something that you should never ever share. This is basically your autonomy, your total control over your own assets, and this should be something that nobody else knows. I'm going to break that rule because I'm going to paste it on, and well, okay, no, some of it's cut off, but basically never ever show people your keys. Obviously, this is just a testnet account, so it's not too big of a deal. But I'm still not going to have it on for too long. But yeah, paste in your account ID, paste in your private key, and once that's been done, then you've started. You've entered into the Hedera Hashgraph developing world. So well done. Like I said, I'll leave you guys a bit of time. Please make sure that you've spelled account ID correctly and private key correctly. One thing that computers are not good at is typos. So if anything is incorrect, even the casing, then the computer will just cause a fit because it has to be absolutely perfect. So I'm gonna paste in kind of, well, account ID, and I'm gonna paste in private key just so you can copy and paste it yourself, just to ensure that it's all correct. But yeah, we've kind of done the environment setup, and I think we're ready to move on to the next part of the thing. So I'm just going to kind of briefly explain what a transaction is, which is what we're going to be building now that we've set up this environment. Now, yeah, what is a transaction? Well, a transaction is a record of activity. Anything that is a change, an update, or a removal of information on the Hedera Hashgraph / blockchain requires a transaction. So that's basically what a transaction is. It's not necessarily specifically to do with money, but there is always like an exchange going on, and like I said over here in this next point, it requires a fee payer. So every transaction needs to have a small amount of HBAR paid in order to go along with the transaction. So let's say you're trying to send an account 100 HBAR. You might need to send 100 HBAR and then 0.01 HBAR for the fee. Now, the fee is always paid in HBAR, even if you're not necessarily transacting with HBAR. You might be sending an NFT to someone. You might be calling a smart contract function. All of these things require an HBAR payment, which is why we have the testnet account to provide that payment. All of them require a payment in order for the transaction to be submitted to the network. What is HBAR? Well, HBAR is the native token to the Hedera Hashgraph. It's used to pay for all of the services that the network provides. And on top of that, it also keeps the network safe and helps basically verify and validate this immutable database, which I was alluding to earlier. Now, Hedera Hashgraph is a proof of stake network. Some of you might know what proof of stake is, what proof of work is, all of these different consensus mechanisms. Again, this is not something that is going to be covered within the scope of this course. However, it's another reason it's another use of HBAR. HBAR is used to stake, which then provides a fair consensus mechanism. What are private keys? Now, again, I've kind of mentioned private keys earlier. Private keys are the keys which give you the full power and with that the responsibility over your own assets. They should never be shared, because if somebody else has your private key, then anything that belongs to you also belongs to them. So you use them as a signature to sign transactions. Like I said, a transaction is any sort of change to the blockchain, and you use it to sign the transaction to verify that the request is coming from you. So yeah, let's create, sign, and send a transaction. We'll go back over to Visual Studio Code for now, and get started with that. So we're going to need to create a new file. And again, it's very in computer programming, it's good to try and be as descriptive as you possibly can without being overly descriptive. But we're creating a function which is going to send a transaction. So I would suggest calling the file send transaction. Now, you might notice that I've done the casing slightly different relative to .env. This is called camel casing, and this is something that's just like a convention within JavaScript. And to show that we want a JavaScript file, we need to append this send transaction with .js. You'll see that before, this logo is just like the 4 lines which you were talking about earlier, Robert. That just means it's a text file. What we want is a JavaScript file, so we click JS, and then it will not, again, VS Code will pick up, okay, this is a JavaScript file, just like the computer does, and it will then give us this icon to let us know what file is what. So yeah, again, press enter, you'll automatically be opened up into this send transaction file, and from here we can begin importing the npm modules, the npm packages which we have already imported. So to do that, there's 2 ways of doing it. One of them is a more modern way, which we're not going to be doing because that requires a bit of extra configuration. And when I say a bit, I mean literally 1 line, but we're not going to be doing that way. Maybe we can do that in the future. We're going to be using a method called require, which just basically means import. And so the first thing that we're going to be requiring is we're going to be requiring .env. So what you need to do is you need to type in require, then you need to type in your apostrophes. It can be double quotation marks or single, doesn't matter. And then we want to type in .env. It should automatically pop up. And after the final close bracket / parentheses, you're going to want to type in config and then brackets again. Now, what this line of code does is it tells this file that, okay, look, reference this .env file, take the information from this file, and we're going to use these keys. So that's the first thing we're going to be requiring. The second thing that we're going to be requiring is the other node module which we installed, and that one is the Hashgraph SDK. So to do that, because we're going to be requiring quite a few of their files, we're going to need to put it inside these curly braces, and after that we're going to say equals require, and then again the apostrophes / quotation marks, and you want to say at hashgraph /SDK. Right, before I go any further, actually, I'm just going to send the Git repository to the chat so that you can have this to the side. I am cautious of time. I think because we started a little bit late, there may be a little overrun, but I think we should still be able to do everything within the next 10 minutes. So yeah, I'm just going to send this into the Teams chat as well, which you can have as to the side. This is kind of the perfect code. But we're going to be requiring some methods inside this Hashgraph SDK. So we're going to be requiring, first of all, the transfer transaction method. Again, it should automatically pop up, and it should be a green color as well. That shows that it's a class. I'm not going to get into what a class is, but just think of it as a bit of code which allows us to interact with the Hashgraph. After we do that first one, we're also going to be taking client. Make sure you do a comma after transfer transaction. And I think for the time being, this will be all that we need. So yeah, I'll paste this into the chat just so you can copy and paste it in yourself. But these are basically the two classes which we're going to be using today. We're going to be using the transfer transaction class and the client class. And before we get started, we need to actually, so we've told the program that we want to install, we want to take the variables from this .env file, but we haven't actually attached them to any JavaScript variables. So we're going to do that now. We're going to say const account ID. Now you might be saying, oh, why is it not called account ID like that? Like we did it in the other file. You can do it like that. However, in JavaScript, like I mentioned with the file name, you do this thing called camel casing. So we're going to stick to convention, and that's going to be equal to process.env.account_ID. Now, just to confirm that you've spelt it in the same way, what I would say is write this out and then paste it in, because this needs to be exactly the same. If we go account IDD, it's going to cause an error. So make sure that you've spelt it in the correct way. Similarly to that, we're also going to need to create a private key variable. And we're going to say that's equal to process.env.private_key. Again, I'd just recommend copy and pasting it. So yeah, so now we've bound. So now we've bound the variables in this .env file, and now it's in a JavaScript variable. So now we can use it in our JavaScript code. And what we're going to do after we've done that is we're going to create our function, our send transaction function. So this is going to be what's called an asynchronous function. Now, what an asynchronous function basically means is that we're going to be interacting with the internet. So it's not going to be able to happen instantaneously. It's going to require a bit of time, and we're going to need to await. We're going to need to send something to the internet, and that's going to then receive a response. That's what the async is telling us. Function just means that it's going to be a function. And after that, we can then put our function name, which I'm just also going to call send tx. Tx I use as shorthand for transaction. After that, we need to give it some brackets, because all functions need to have brackets. And then we're going to go some curly braces. And inside this space is where we're going to be writing our function. So yeah, I'm just going to keep on typing. If I'm going too quick, just shout out, give me a pause. But you can also kind of copy and paste it from the code that I've already got. So we're going to be creating our transaction variable. This is basically I've got over on the slides that yeah, we need to create, sign, and send a transaction. So what we're doing right now is we're creating the transaction. So I'm just going to call it transaction, to be honest. And this is going to be equal to a new instance of this transfer transaction class. Again, it should automatically pop up, so you can know that you've correctly written it if it automatically pops up. And we're just going to put brackets after that. And now we can specify what type of properties we're going to be sending. We're basically going to be building the transaction, and we're going to be choosing the options in which the transaction is built. So I'm just going to reference the Hedera documents now, just to kind of show how important they are, how useful they are. And over in the SDK section, we can then go to transactions, and we can say these are all the different types of transactions which are available. We'll be covering quite a few of them, not all of them, but quite a few. So we're doing a transfer transaction. And on here, it tells you kind of all of the available methods which you can give it. So you can add a HBAR transfer, a token transfer, token just being a fungible token. You can add an NFT transfer, a token transfer with decimals, approved HBAR transfer. There's lots of flexibility, and this is what makes Hedera Hashgraph so good, is there's lots of different options that you can do. We're going to be doing an add HBAR transfer. Because that's currently the only token which our testnet accounts have. They've only got the HBAR. So we're going to be typing in after we've done these closed brackets, press enter, and then you should do a dot, and you want to type in dot. Add HBAR transfer.
Sorry, mate. Does it matter if the dot is like kind of partially down, or can it be like directly underneath?
So it can be like that, it can be like that, it can be like this. What I would recommend is pressing enter and then pressing shift, just so that it's more readable.
Yeah, fine. I just didn't know how to get it to like that little bit in front without.
Oh yeah, so you want to press shift. Okay, it's worth 4 spaces or 2.
All right, cool, perfect.
Now the HBAR transfer, again, we can have a look at inside the documentation, and it tells us what arguments we need to enter into this function. An argument is basically something which you pass into a function. So we need to give it an account ID, and we need to give it a value. Now the account ID, well, we're going to be sending it from our own account ID. So for that, we're just going to pass in account ID for the first one. Now this refers to the account ID of the developer account which we've set up. And the second argument is going to be the amount we're going to be sending. Now, because we're sending HBAR as opposed to receiving it, we need to give a negative number. So I'm just going to say -100. We're then going to press enter again once we've got this, and we're going to press enter again, and we're going to add another HBAR transfer. And this is going to be the account which receives the HBAR. So obviously at the moment we've only got one account, which is the account we've created. I'm going to pass in one of my own testnet accounts, and this is where we're going to send the HBAR to. Afterwards we'll be able to check that it's been received into my wallet, this hashpack wallet. So yeah, we're gonna wow, that's actually no, I need to get the keys. So yeah, we're just gonna send some test HBAR wallet. Trust me, it's not real, otherwise you wouldn't have had 10,000 of it. But yeah, we're gonna send it to this wallet. We can then check that it's actually been received. It can demonstrate how quick it all is relative to things like Ethereum. So yeah, so we just pass in the account ID, and this is going to be receiving 100. Now, one thing to note is that the sum of all of the HBAR transfers must balance out to 0. So in this case, it does -100 and 100 equals 0. If you had -100 and you accidentally did 1,000, this will cause an error because it is a net 0. Obviously, it's impossible to receive 1,000 if you've only sent 100. So make sure that they're both kind of the same amount, but one is times by -1 of the other, and that they then balance out to equal 0.
Wait, Jake, sorry, you don't have to put in a plus before the 100, do you?
No, you don't have to put in a plus. Yeah, you can just do like a normal 100 like that. It won't cause any errors though if you do put a plus, I don't think. But yeah, it's not a requirement.
Presume we have to save this code as well. Just everything.
Very, very good point. I was actually going to do a little.
I just like we forgot, and then I would just remembered that there's a little thing.
Well, there's the white dot exactly. So we haven't quite finished it yet. I'm also just going to paste this in so you guys can copy it if you're still if you're a bit behind. But this is the building side of the transaction, which is really good. Now we're going to sign it. So we're going to create a new variable, which we're going to say is the sign transaction. I'll just say sign tx for shorthand. And this is going to be equal to transaction.execute. And what we're going to be, again, the argument which we're going to be passing into the execute is, apologies, I've missed it out. So we haven't created our client. So backtracking a bit, we're just going to create a client, which we'll call client. And that's going to be equal to client.set.for.testnet.set operator. And the operator is going to be this account ID and the private key. I'll paste this into the chat so you guys can quickly do it. But yeah, that's my mistake for not doing it earlier. So yeah, just copy and paste that. Make sure you do it above this function. Make sure you do it above the function. And once you've done that, we then just want to copy and paste this client inside here. Now, I mentioned briefly earlier about this async function stuff. Because this particular line of code requires interaction with the Hedera Hashgraph, which is an internet-based thing, we need to actually say, okay, we're going to be awaiting it because it's not going to be able to resolve instantaneously. We need to say, okay, we're going to send the transaction, wait for it to give me a response back, and then we're going to continue. So that's what this await is for. Again, I'll copy and paste this in. So this is our execution of it. This is pretty much the main thing. We've created this transaction and now we've submitted it. So now what we can do is we can actually get our transaction ID. So I'll just call this transaction ID. That's going to be equal to sign tx dot get transaction ID. Not get, okay. So that's just going to be equal to sign tx dot transaction ID. And then what we're going to do, I've also pasted that into the chat, is we're gonna console log it into the screen, and that's where we're going to be able to actually look online on the Hedera Hashgraph Explorer and show that, okay, look, this is the public information. This transaction can be viewed by anybody, given that you have the transaction ID. So what we're going to do for that is we're going to say console log. We're just going to give it a little information. We're going to say this is called the transaction ID, and then we need to say that's equal to the transaction ID. So Dylan, over here, sorry for the alarm, over here you do need to include a plus. That's for reasons which I'll explain briefly now, but basically this transaction ID is a big object, an object being a type of data, and by having it in a plus, by saying we've got a string plus this, it automatically converts this into a string, which just means that it's nice and readable. So once that's been done, I'm going to paste this line in as well. This is our function done. Now, it's not, well, I'm presuming that you've all saved it. However, it's not quite ready to run quite yet. Could anyone maybe suggest what, somebody who's got a bit of programming experience, would anyone maybe be able to suggest why, if we were to run this file, nothing would happen? I know there's a few people who do Python in here, so it's the same kind of the same principle as to why a function wouldn't run in Python. If we've defined it like this, it's not going to run until no line that calls the function, exactly. So we need to actually call the function. Now to call it, we're just going to be, obviously we've got the function name, it's called sendTX. So we're going to just copy and paste that. And this is basically our function. So now we've got a line which calls the function, and this basically tells the program, okay, look, we've got this function over here. Over here, we're saying invoke it. And yeah, this should be good to go. There's a very high probability that there will be an error, just because that's kind of natural.
Sorry, question.
Yeah,
if it's right, I don't know if this is relevant. I have no coding background. How did you make the sendTX brackets go yellow instead of purple? Oh, you just copied it. Oh, right. Okay, fine. You just copied and pasted it from up there, did you?
Yeah. Did you?
I just typed it out manually.
You typed it, and it's gone purple over here.
Yeah. I typed out at the bottom, so I didn't copy it from the top from line 12. I just typed it out on line 23, and it was purple. But up on line 12, it is yellow. So I just copied.
Yeah. It's not. Well, I don't know why. It's
still purple. I don't know. Never mind then.
Yeah. Basically, it doesn't really matter. You've definitely done. Well, it should be right. It should be right. The colors might be different from mine because I've added some extra stuff in this. So now that we have created this function and we've invoked it, we've said that we're gonna call it. We're gonna actually type in node and then the name of this file, node send transaction. I've got a habit of typing node server because I create a lot of servers. And when you press enter, there we go. So if you typed everything correctly, then you should receive this output. Transaction ID is blah blah blah, and that's the transaction ID. We can actually then go onto my Hashpack wallet, and if we go into history and refresh, there we go. So this is my particular transfer transaction. So it said that it's come from 26562420. If we have a look at the .env file, 2656240, and yeah, this is, well, evidence that very, very quick. If you were to do this on the Bitcoin or Ethereum blockchain, it would not be so quick. I'm currently the only person who has sent it, so we'll leave it a few minutes, see if any of you have been able to do it successfully.
Yeah, I got an error, so I guess I did something wrong.
Yeah, so I think that's probably why that.
Yeah, it's purple.
Look, if everyone's at the same point, I'm just going to copy and paste the whole code.
All right, cool. It'd be interesting to see what I did wrong, but I probably missed something.
Well, look, so maybe what you want to do, Robert, is actually what you can do is you can comment out all of this code. So if you highlight it and then you press Control/, it automatically adds these 2 slashes before each of the lines, and that just basically tells the program that I don't want to read it. So you can keep it there, which you can then check later on.
Yeah.
Sorry, Jake. What was the command just to send the transaction again?
Right. Okay. Let me send that in. So you want to type in. Firstly, make sure that there's no white circle over there. Make sure that it's saved. And then what you want to be doing is you want to type in node send transaction. That's assuming that your file is called sendtransaction.js.
Yeah, I didn't spell it right.
Right. Okay. So yeah. So make sure that if you haven't spelled it right, then just spell whatever you've actually called it, and that should work. And there we go. It's still only been me who's been able to send it. So if anyone has any questions as to why theirs isn't working, it should just respond with this transaction ID.
No, I spelled it right, but now it's not working still. So I think I messed up something in the code.
So what I would do is have you added this client for testnet thing, yeah?
I'm just trying to see if I spelled it word for word, but I have got that there, yeah.
Did you copy and paste the whole code, yeah?
Oh shit, you put that in there now, have you?
Yeah. So just if you, that's
Oh,
probably
I
the
see
best
it.
bit.
Yeah, I see it. Yeah.
Just copy and paste the whole thing.
So just add it on a new line.
Well, remove everything that's been done before, because that
Okay.
will cause like clashes. Or you can highlight everything and then do that control / thing that I said.
Yeah, cool. Give me 2.
Yeah, so there hasn't been no one's been able to send it. So like, please, honestly, if there's like an error which has been occurring, call it out to me and we can see and try and work it through together. One thing that I'd also say is make sure that the .m file is saved and make sure that these account IDs are spelt in the same way. But well, nonetheless, I'll move on just because I'm conscious of time. I've overrun a little bit. And now I'm going to bring up this thing called Hashscan, which is what Hashscan is it's just like it's a web app in which you can check all of everything that's happened on the Hedera Hashgraph. And what we can actually do is we can find out this transaction ID. So I'm just going to copy and paste it, and we can search it in here. And from here, everybody will be able to. You don't have to be logged in or anything. You can see that the transaction has been okay. It's been an HBAR transaction worth that amount. It's the 100 plus the very small amount of fees. It's gone from this account. It's been sent to that account, and yeah, it's got all of the relevant information. You guys will be able to see the same thing as well. I'm going to share it in here, so you guys will be able to see it. But yeah, I'm gonna call it a day at that. I will stay on for a bit longer after this if you wanna stay on and ask a few questions. But yeah, this is basically the first lesson. I hope you enjoyed it. All of the code is online, and yeah, next week we'll be going on multi-key signatures and scheduled transactions. But yeah, thank you all for taking the time to join, and I wish you all a very, very good rest of your day.